Good morning. It is the 27th of October, and here we are. Uh, it's a beautiful day. We've had a string of them. We can just be thankful for all of the color that's coming finally. It's a bit late, but here we are with color. Lovely. I'm going to begin today with a bit of reading from Psalm 19. The heavens are telling of the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. Day by day pours forth speech. Night to night declares knowledge. There's no speech, there's no words where his voice is not heard. Yet the voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Indeed, the Spirit of God is speaking to each one of us all around the world, trying to convince us of the goodness of God. And he is the one who made all things. We can be glad for his presence. A verse of a song. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. He has done great things. He has done great things. He has done great things. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Yeah. A few announcements here. We have a bluegrass concert next week. That'd be at 6 p.m. So come on down to the church house. They're always the first Sunday of a month. The ladies are having a fellowship gathering. That's at 10 o'clock on November 6th. That'd be in the basement. It's a daylight basement. You can walk in from the lower side. Um, Well, the current contributions that went into missions at the relief sale was $439,000, 427. So that's a pile of money, and it's good that it goes for mission. We're glad for that. That's all for our public, but blessings to you. Our sermon comes from the last in the series of James. The reading actually will be covered in the sermon itself, but I'll tell you that you can open up to James 5, 7 to 11, and then 19 to 20. The Apostle James said, "Be patient, brothers and sisters, until the time of the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient, stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near." Alan Kreider wrote a book called The Patient Ferment of the Early Church. That was back in 2016, so it's a pretty fresh book. And his thesis is that patience was the attribute preached on most often in the early church. To help us understand why, I guess we need to understand what was going on at the time. Uh, though the church was growing gangbusters, it was under persecution from both Rome, who liked to use the Jews as the ones they blamed, and from Jewish Hebrews, those that thought they were messing with the faith and changing it. So they were being persecuted from both sides. The work of Paul who became an apostle, is clear. He was persecuting them before he became a follower of Christ. People were being martyred for their faith. This was not an easy time. Believers hid. In fact, their worship services were not used like we often do today as evangelical tools. No, people were actually praising God, worshiping God, but keeping their worship quiet and actually not inviting stray newcomers. People had to be known very well because believers were afraid that they would be turned in, snitched on. So, a different look at even evangelism. In spite of Jesus' words that he would return soon, their lives were hard and dangerous. Sermons spoke of the need for patience to wait for the Lord's coming. That's what James said here. Be patient, stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. That's verse 8, chapter 5. Along that time, there was a fellow named Justin the Martyr. He was martyred, and that's how he got that name. He said, when Christians live with integrity and visibility, by our patience and meekness, Christians draw all men from shame and evil desires. Patience attracts people. He concluded with that thought. Now, that's pretty amazing. And that may be a new thought to you and me, that patience is attractive. If it is, we should practice it. People practice using the four spiritual laws to evangelize. People use different techniques to help spread the gospel. Maybe we need to be practicing patience. How can we learn to do that and be that? Patience is about doing and being. And who are our role models? Who have you had? Jesus is our best example. He came as part of God and didn't use a supernatural godly powers to convince anyone of his lordship. In fact, that was one of the temptations. The devil said, look at all this. If you'll just worship me, I'll grant all of it to you. No, rather than supernaturally seeking out those kinds of powers in order to fulfill the mission of God, he went patiently, person by person, starting with 12, and spread the good news. Patience attracts people. Consider how when it came to persecution, Jesus didn't call down supernatural powers to save himself. He went through the plan. He was tortured and killed on our behalf. Consider how he spoke of the disciples as his friends, in spite of them having doubts. And that's spoken of, the doubts, right in the second to last sentence in the book of Matthew. That's patience. But Jesus showed us the way to righteousness and peace and life, and certainly patience. Each of us have known people that stood out for their patience. Who have they been for you? Well, my grandma was patient with my grandpa, who's judgmental in his faith. My mom was patient with my dad, who got drunk constantly up until I was 20 years old. That's when he changed his life through the grace of God. They were wonderful examples of patience. They didn't just let it be, they prayed. They left it in the hands of God. But who have your examples been? Well, James continued, he said, "Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who persevered. You have heard Job's perseverance of it and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy." Do you see that grumbling, that's why James brought it up, is the opposite of patience, and it's an outflow of impatience? Do you see that James continued his theme here? It's not a new thought, this business of the judge is standing at the door and don't grumble. This is part of be patient. Yeah. Do you see that perseverance is also part of patience? Because perseverance is sticking to something we really believe in, even when it gets hard. Yeah. Well, finally, James said, and for our lesson today at least, "My brothers and sisters, if anyone among you wanders from the truth and is brought back by another, you should know that whoever brings back a sinner from wandering will save the sinner's soul from death and will cover a multitude of sins." My mother really clung to that on behalf of her husband, my father. For 20 years of my life, he was drunk constantly. But she didn't fill her house with nagging or strife. She prayed. She let him know what she thought was best. And that could have seemed like nagging because when you're guilty, you don't want to hear it. But she didn't fill her house with strife. Patience is a virtue mentioned in Galatians 5. It's part of the fruit of the Spirit. It says something like this: "Let love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control be evident in your life." Today's lesson is about patience and strength to wait upon the Lord. If we grow in that, the trials of life won't seem so bad, at least not so bad as to an impatient person. That concludes then the new material of James. I'd like to recap. What have the thoughts been in the book of James? Well, we saw in the first chapter that we're to consider trials and any kind of humbug as a blessing. Now, that's speaking to patience, isn't it? They cause us to grow our endurance and maturity, faith, wisdom. If we lack anything, he said, ask God for it. Hold tight. Don't be double minded. That's about patience, praying for what we want, not grabbing it, not grumbling. He also said, be assured that the lowly will be raised up and the high and mighty will be brought down. That's a startling message, but it's also one about patience. Knowing that things will be made right. We don't have to jump in and do a terrible thing because of inequality that we see. We just have to do our best to support the lowly, pray for them, and let God be the judge. He said, don't blame God when you're tempted. You know, in our impatience, we often blame anyone for uh, for our temptations and our falling. But he's saying, no, don't blame God. You have all of your own temptations stored up in your head. Yeah, you see that in 12 verses 12 and 14. He said we have to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Patience. Don't show favoritism. Yeah, I know he was speaking of rich people and showing favoritism to them. And often, to curry favor to perhaps get the influence of a well-to-do person in our churches, we might curry favor with them, and we might treat the poor and lowly quite differently. That too is related to patience. Don't let our faith be seen. Oh, no, let me say this again. Let our faith be seen as action, because faith without action is dead. That was a that was a hard one to take. I think people have tripped over that for years. That is certainly why Martin Luther didn't like it, because his thesis, Martin Luther's, was that grace covers all. But James begs to say that faith without action is dead. Tame the tongue, he said in the 3rd chapter. That's where he speaks of the tongue being a very small thing, little embers that causes a whole forest fire, a little rudder that steers a whole big ship, and how evil can come from our mouth, and that evil and goodness should not come out of that mouth. Uh, yeah. In the 4th chapter, he said, friendship with the world is enmity with God, to be an enemy of God. Yeah. Friendship with the world. Why would we be friends with the world? Well, they're all around us. We want to curry favor. We want to get along. That too has a tie to patience. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Lovely verse, one that I've clung to. In my teenage years, that was especially hard, but it continues all through life. We can cling to that. Be humble about your plans, he said in the 4th chapter. If God grants the way forward, that's the way you'll go. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't embellish a promise. Now, I haven't covered that in this series. I skipped over it, but it's a lovely verse in chapter 5, verse 12. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. Seek help from others, confess sins together, strive to be holy. And then finally, if we can help a brother or sister back into faith, we help cover over a multitude of sin. That's a lot. It's as if James just threw everything he could into one letter, sent it out, letting the thing stick to where they ought to stick. If the shoe fits, wear it, kind of thing. Notice that it wasn't a treatise on theology or laying out everything we need to believe in a neat package. It's really about what we do. And in fancy words, then, that's about ethics. It's about how our faith should inform what we do. He certainly would not believe and not agree with anyone that said what we hold in our head is the most important thing. No, no, he would say, if you have something in your head, let's see by your actions what you believe. Yeah. But that's a lot. Let's take a moment to think of those people who have meant a lot to us and shown us patience. Take a moment to meditate on that. I'll close for now, but I look forward to seeing you again next week. May we grow in the attributes and actions that show that we patiently believe in our Lord Jesus Christ. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. As I close, asking the question, who have been those models of faith that showed you patience. Bye-bye.